So the DC offset device of Bitwig Studio is fairly simple. It says offsets any incoming signal. Be careful. There's a warning. It's a fairly simple device, and it's used to offset an audio signal in one direction, in the positive range or in the negative range. And that's basically all. It's aimed at bad recordings. When you record something from tape or from vinyl and you have some DC offset in there, you can use this to counter it, to correct it basically. But inside Bitwig Studio with the modulation system, you can do a lot of things with this stuff, because it's also very basic, and you can combine it with a lot of modulation modules or modulators, and then get some different effects. And I want to show you some of them. So first I show you what it's actually doing. So let's use, let's use a polysynth here. A polysynth, and maybe also an oscillator here at the end, oscilloscope. And crank up the volume. So you can see here on the scope we have exactly the same amount of positive values as we have as negative. It's fairly symmetrical, but then you can offset this here with the device. Which is not right. So the positive values are representing basically your speaker cone going out of your speaker, and the negative values represent movement of the speaker cone going into your speaker. So the speaker cone is basically moving backwards and forwards all the time and producing sound. So it needs to do this in a symmetrical way. So it needs to go out in the same amount of it goes in to have, a fairly nice, clean signal. So you want to keep it symmetrical, which means you want to keep the middle exactly or you want to keep the waveform exactly in the middle here, also on the middle line. So if you have something like this, something is wrong. So if you watch your speaker cone with this, you can completely move your speaker out of the speaker membrane out of your speaker. You actually use some speakers and then move this out, you can really see the speaker moving out. It's really nice to see. So this means if you modulate this here in with audio rate, you create sound. So use an LFO here. We can go or switch to kilohertz, which is audio rate, audible modulation. You can create a sound with this, right? You can also change the frequency to anything you like, or you can switch here to pitch of current note, which means it uses the key input of your keyboard and changes the frequency to the current note you are pressing on the keyboard. So now we have here a constant sound because we modulate all the time. So we turn this down and use an ADSR, which reacts also to the keyboard or to the piano roll, whatever you want to use, or to the gate information of your keyboard. And we can use this ADSR now to modulate the amount. So every time we press a key, we produce a sound, and if you release the key on the keyboard, we also remove the sound. So this acts now as our VCA, basically, and this is our VCO in the Eurorack world, if you want to call it that way. So we have a basic monophonic synthesizer. So maybe we modulate this here by a fairly amount. Maybe we can modulate here all the way to 1. If we do this, we create here a nice signal, and we turn this down here a bit because we want to play this polyphonically. So now this is monophonic. It just takes one note at a time. We can put this here into an FX layer with Control and G, so we have multiple layers, but we convert this with a right click to an instrument layer and use another right click here and convert it to an instrument selector, right? So now we have on this layer here basically the same DC offset as we had before, but we duplicate this layer here multiple times with Control and D. So we have multiple of these layers, and switch this here on the left side to free Robin. So now you can press multiple keys. Right, you can see we play multiple voices here. So now the synthesizer is now polyphonic. So you can create your own kind of polyphonic synthesizer with the DC offset device, right? So this is just a hint at some experimentations you can do, and I also did a lot of videos about this early on when this came out. So yeah, just as an inspiration. Also back here to the DC offset, there's also some presets you can download from myself called here, I think this one is, yeah, this one is in the package of Polarity Tools. If you want to download this, you just go here to your packages, settings, packages, artist collection, Polarity Tools, and you can download here my small package of 34 megabytes of some presets for random devices inside Bitwig Studio. It's pretty old, it's fairly old, 5 years old or something. It's also fairly small. And you get some nice presets here for the DC offset device here. This one is a raw FM synth, so you can play it on the keyboard. Mix in a different oscillator. Also have attack, decay, sustain. So it's a small little monophonic FM synthesizer. So you can do synthesizers with the DC offset device if you want to. Another thing you can do with the DC offset device is to use it for modifications. So let's create here a piano, stage 8. So it's just playing a piano. Make it a bit louder. So we have here an audio signal coming from the piano tech going through the DC offset device, doing nothing, and then the oscilloscope here. So we add here a chain, which is a container. It's just an empty container where we can put in some devices by Bitwig Studio. We put in here the DC offset device and also a tool. And this tool just mutes everything. So we go down here to -infinite. So now when we play something, you can see we can't hear anything because the tool device actually mutes the signal. What we can do now is we can add here to the chain device an audio rate modulator, which grabs the audio signal here from the piano tech. As you can see here, now we have this as a modulation signal. So we convert the audio signal into a modulation signal. We can take this audio modulation signal here and modulate the DC offset device with this. So now we can hear the piano again, because we use the modulation signal here, completely skip the tool device and replicate the same modulation here on the DC offset and convert it back to the audio signal. The audio rate modulator itself, you have some options. So you can grab the left channel or the right channel, the mid channel or the side channel. You can also apply here a cutoff or a low pass if you want to. Also rectify it if you want to. Rectify basically means to put the negative values back to positive. So we have only positive values. And it sounds a bit like distortion. Kind of like this. So what you can do now is we can grab the middle signal here, which is the left and the right channel together, I guess. And instead of modulating the DC offset device, we remove the modulation here and use a polynom modulator. So now we modulate with the audio rate modulator here, the polynom, by, let's say, 1, okay? And now when we play, you can see the audio rate modulator modulates here the polynom. And then we can take the output of the polynom and modulate the DC offset device. What we can do now is we can change the modulation signal here with the polynom in certain kind of ways and alter the modulation signal and then replicate the modulated or the altered modulation signal and replicate it here with DC offset device. We can create some kind of audio effects. So it's kind of a saturator because you are forcing the audio rate modulation to a certain type of curve or alternate path here, and you create some overtones with this or because of that, right? So this is one way of creating saturation effects or distortion effects. So something you can try out. You can also use, for instance, a quantizer here, quantizer modulator, and then modulate with the audio rates modulator here, this quantizer. And then with the quantizer output, you modulate the DC offset device, and you kind of create a bit crusher with this. You increase the resolution, you get more details. Switch here the modes. It's actually pretty soft and it sounds more like a texture on top of something. So it's probably nice for lo-fi music, lo-fi beats. You can see it on the right side. It looks like pretty fairly bit crushed. So this is also something you can do. So you can modify, because we have now here the audio signal as a modulation signal. You can use all the modulators you have in Bitwig Studio, because all these modulators support audio rate. You can modify the signal in any shape or ways you want to, and then use the output of this and bring it back to an audio signal with the DC offset device. Okay, so this is possible now with this. We can also modulate here directly the DC offset device, let's say by just go only to 0.9. And now this means the signal actually never crosses this line. Which means we just implemented some kind of clipper. Let's use your tool device. Let's see, we never go across 0 dB. So it's also something you can use to limit the modulation amount. And while you are limiting the modulation amount, you also limit basically the waveform peak, or the maximum peak of the waveform. So you just implemented some kind of clipper with this. So this is also possible because we have here the audio rate inside of the modulation system. So the DC offset device is a pretty interesting device because it's so rudimentary and so easy and so simple. You can do a lot of things with this. So also here we have only a mono signal so far because we use here the mid signal. We can also say we only want to grab here the left side and replicate here the left side, so we can call this left. Put this in a FX layer with Control G, duplicate this and call this right. That's also right here. So we don't want to modulate here with the left audio rate, don't want to modulate the right side. We want to duplicate this, take here the right side and modulate this oscillator with it. Well, let's see, 0.9, 0.9. Okay, so now we modulate with the left audio rate modulator, the left side, and with the right audio modulator here, the right side. So now we replicate basically the stereo signal. But we need to also pan the right side to the right side and the left side to the left side. So now it's stereo. It's basically the same signal. It's a bit, it sounds a bit different in loudness, but you get the idea. So, yeah, it's a fairly interesting device. You can do a lot of things with it, and it's not just for correcting wrong recorded audio stuff from vinyl or from tape. Okay, so I think that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.